In the everyday chaos of a local market, Peter, a young worker with Down syndrome, struggled to stay calm on his first day at work. But the calm was shattered when an angry customer began humiliating him with cruel words while everyone around watched in silence, unwilling to intervene. What no one knew was that among the customers, a famous Hollywood actor was observing the scene, and what he did next would leave everyone speechless. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Peter, a 21-year-old young man with Down syndrome, was always known for his kindness and dedication. Despite his contagious energy, he faced internal battles that few could see. His relationship with his former stepfather, a cold and abusive man, had left deep scars on his self-esteem. Short flashbacks showed Peter as a child, sitting at the table while his stepfather hurled insults. "You'll never amount to anything, boy. Don't even try." The harsh tone and cruel words echoed in his mind, as if it were yesterday. But Peter was resilient despite it all. He decided he would be stronger than any words meant to diminish him. Today, that spirit of perseverance was his greatest strength. The local market was small but lively, shelves neatly stocked with various products, and the sound of carts rolling over the polished floor filled the air. Peter walked through the main door, wearing his uniform with pride. He was greeted by Jack, the manager, who welcomed him with an encouraging smile. "Welcome to the team, Peter. We're happy to have you with us." Peter eagerly shook Jack's hand. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best." The training began immediately. Peter was introduced to his tasks, from organizing products to bagging groceries. He listened attentively, mentally noting every detail. His enthusiasm didn't go unnoticed by his colleagues, but neither did their discreet glances and comments about his slower pace. "He's a bit slow, isn't he?" one of the co-workers whispered, unaware that Peter overheard. Peter pretended not to notice and continued his work, determined to prove himself capable. By the end of the shift, he was exhausted but proud of completing his first day. As Peter finished bagging the last customer's groceries, a loud sigh came from the line. He glanced at the clock with relief, realizing his shift was nearly over. However, he didn't notice someone in the line watching with growing impatience. This person's eyes narrowed as Peter continued, oblivious to the tension beginning to rise. The sound of the market's automatic doors sliding open announced the arrival of Karen, a 45-year-old woman with a rigid posture and an air of evident superiority. Her heels echoed across the tiled floor as she walked briskly down the main aisle. Karen wore a stern expression, her face already radiating disapproval before even assessing the situation. She stopped abruptly upon seeing the checkout lines, letting out an exaggerated sigh of irritation. "These stores never know how to organize things," she muttered loud enough for the other customers to hear. Grabbing a cart, she pushed it forward with urgency, maneuvering through the aisles as though she were in a race. Karen hurriedly selected products, tossing them into the cart without care. Any minor obstacle, like a child in her path or another customer comparing prices, was met with impatient glares and audible scoffs. After filling her cart, Karen headed to the checkout. The line wasn't long, but to someone with so little patience, it felt endless. She joined Peter's line, watching him from a distance as he carefully bagged a previous customer's items. Peter's methodical movements caught Karen's attention. "Is this for real?" she muttered, rolling her eyes. "How can someone this slow be working here?" When it was finally her turn, Karen slammed her items onto the counter, shoving them forward as if to physically express her frustration. Peter greeted her with a polite smile and a timid, "Good morning, ma'am." She responded with a cold glare and a sarcastic tone. "I hope it is good, because I don't have all day." Peter began scanning Karen's items carefully, double-checking the codes and bagging them meticulously. However, her piercing stare seemed to burn into him. Every small movement he made was met with an audible sigh or the impatient tapping of her fingers on the counter. "Is this going to take long?" Karen asked, leaning forward. "Because honestly, it feels like I'm watching this in slow motion." Peter's face turned visibly red, and his hands began to tremble slightly. He tried to move faster, but his nervousness only worsened his coordination. A package slipped from his hand and fell to the floor, prompting him to quickly crouch down to retrieve it. "Oh my God, he can't even hold a bag!" Karen said loudly, glancing around as if seeking validation from the other customers. Peter kept trying to do his job, but his breathing grew heavier, and it was clear he was on the verge of tears. Karen crossed her arms, leaning even closer to the counter. "Someone needs to do something about this," she said, now raising her voice. "This is ridiculous. I don't have all day to deal with incompetence." A murmur began to rise among the other customers as the tension in the line grew with each passing second. Karen was about to take another step closer to the counter when something unexpected began to shift the atmosphere of the market. Karen, now visibly enraged, stepped forward and pointed directly at Peter. Her voice dripping with disdain, she said, "This is unacceptable. You shouldn't be working here if you can't handle something as simple as bagging groceries. Who hired you?" Because clearly it was out of pity. Peter's eyes widened at the force of her words. He tried to maintain his composure, but the trembling in his hands grew worse. Meanwhile, Karen turned to the other customers in line, seeking allies for her verbal assault. "Do you all see this? We're all being held up because of him," she gestured dramatically as if putting on a performance. "This is a fast lane, and he is anything but fast." The cruel words cut through Peter like blades. He lowered his gaze to the counter, trying to focus on the groceries, but another bag slipped from his hands and fell to the floor. The sound of the bag hitting the tiles seemed to amplify his humiliation. "Look at that!" Karen exclaimed, laughing sarcastically. "He can't even hold a bag. This is pathetic." Peter swallowed hard, his breathing uneven as he tried to pull himself together. He knew he needed to finish the transaction, but the pressure and embarrassment were becoming unbearable. He glanced toward Jack, the manager, who was across the store, preoccupied with another task. Karen's harsh words triggered painful memories from Peter's past. He recalled sitting at the kitchen table as a child, his stepfather hurling similar insults at him. "You'll never get anything right, boy. You're dead weight, and everyone knows it." In the memory, Peter hunched his shoulders, trying to shrink away from the harsh words, but they always found him. He felt the same tightness in his throat now, as he did back then, standing in front of Karen. "I just want to help," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. Karen, noticing that Peter was visibly shaken, took another step closer. She pointed her finger at him, as if reprimanding a child. "Someone needs to teach you how to do a real job. You're holding everyone up." Her voice grew louder, echoing through the store. The other customers, unsure of what to do, exchanged uneasy glances. Some pulled out their phones, recording the scene, while others looked uncomfortable but kept silent. Peter tried to open his mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come out. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he fought to keep them from falling. He focused on his task, but his hands were trembling so badly that he could hardly keep hold of the groceries. The sound of a bag dropping again seemed to carry across the store, amplifying his humiliation. Just as Karen was about to make another cruel remark, a sudden shift in the atmosphere broke through the tension. The firm sound of footsteps approaching caused everyone to stop and look toward the source. Karen's gaze, still fixed on Peter, was interrupted as the man stepped into view. The market, once filled with uncomfortable silence, now felt still, as if time itself had slowed. The usual hum of shopping carts and the chatter of customers were muted by the thick atmosphere. All eyes turned toward the checkout line, where Karen was angrily gesturing at Peter. "This is an insult to my time," she yelled, throwing her arms in the air. "I can't believe I have to deal with this." The customers in line avoided eye contact, shifting nervously. An older woman at the back of the line leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Isn't someone going to do something?" That poor boy looked so lost. The husband hesitated and shrugged. "I don't know. We don't want to cause trouble, do we?" Meanwhile, Karen was oblivious to the discomfort she was causing. She continued her tirade, her voice rising with each passing second. But it was clear that something was about to change. As she began to speak again, her words were cut off by the arrival of a new presence. A tall, confident man stepped forward, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the rising tension. The customers in line stared in silence, some whispering among themselves. "Is that?" one person said, already pulling out their phone to record. The man was dressed casually in a simple shirt and pants. As he approached the counter, the crowd realized who he was: Leonardo DiCaprio. Karen, still bristling with frustration, turned toward him. "And you think you can just show up here and tell me how to act?" Her voice was sharp, but there was a nervous edge to it now. She hadn't expected anyone to challenge her. Leonardo stepped closer, his eyes steady and his posture calm. "I'm not telling you how to act," he replied, his voice soft but firm. "I'm saying what you're doing right now is wrong." Karen blinked in confusion, her defiance faltering for a moment. "Wrong? You don't even know what's going on here. I'm just stating the facts. This boy is holding everyone up." Leonardo smiled faintly, though his eyes remained intense. "The facts? The fact is he's doing his job, and you've chosen to humiliate him for it. There's a big difference between stating facts and using them as a weapon." The murmurs of the customers around them grew louder, and the attention shifted to Karen. No longer the one in control, Karen found herself surrounded by disapproving eyes. Peter, still trembling behind the counter, looked up at Leonardo. He couldn't quite understand why this man was standing up for him, but he felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a sense of relief that he hadn't experienced before. Leonardo took a step closer to Peter, his expression softening. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone calm and encouraging. Peter, struggling to speak, stammered, Peter." Leonardo nodded, a reassuring smile spreading across his face. "Peter, you're doing a great job here. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." He placed a hand gently on Peter's shoulder, offering him comfort and support. "We all have tough days, but those days don't define who we are." Tears welled up in Peter's eyes as he nodded slowly, overwhelmed by the kindness. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen, not as someone to be ridiculed, but as a person deserving of respect. Karen, now visibly uncertain, crossed her arms and let out a nervous laugh. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but this has nothing to do with you. I just want fast service, and he's clearly not up to the job." Leonardo's expression grew serious as he turned to face her. "I'm someone who believes in respect," he said, his voice firm. "It doesn't cost anything to be kind, and you've clearly lost sight of that." Karen scoffed, but there was no conviction in her voice. "I have the right to be frustrated. I'm wasting my time here." Leonardo nodded slightly. "You absolutely have the right to feel frustrated. What you don't have the right to do is take that frustration out on someone who's done nothing to deserve it, especially not on someone who's here to help you." By now, several other customers began to speak up. A woman in the middle of the line raised her voice. "He's right. It's not fair to treat the young man like this." Another person chimed in. "We're all waiting in line. No one else is complaining. What makes you think you're different?" Murmurs of support for Leonardo spread through the line, and Karen's confidence began to crumble. She looked around and realized that the support she had hoped for was absent. Instead, she found herself surrounded by disapproving gazes, many of the customers still recording the moment on their phones. As Leonardo turned to leave, he paused to offer Peter one final piece of advice. "Keep being yourself," he said with a smile, "because who you are is already more than enough." As Leonardo DiCaprio left the store, the atmosphere in it changed dramatically. The customers who had been silent or watching from a distance now began to lively discuss what had just happened. A woman in the middle of the line spoke up loudly. "That was amazing! Did you see how he handled everything?" Another person, standing closer to Karen, added, "I never imagined someone like Leonardo DiCaprio would step in. That was incredible." Still in awe of the moment, the customers exchanged many thoughts and opinions. Some kept watching the videos they had managed to record and discussed how important the act of support shown by the man who intervened was. Among all this noise, Peter, still standing behind the counter, remained in shock. He was overwhelmed and unsure how to process the words of support, but in his heart, something had begun to shift. When Karen finally left the store, the sound of her heels faded, and a brief silence followed her departure. The atmosphere in the store had completely transformed. Those who had once looked at Peter with judgment or pity now approached him with words of sincere support. People began to truly notice him and appreciate his efforts, and Peter, feeling more confident, no longer feared his own presence. When his shift came to an end, Peter walked to the locker room slowly. He sat down on the wooden bench, his gaze fixed on his uniform. He was deeply lost in thought about everything that had happened throughout the day. For so long, he had felt invisible, only seeing his mistakes or his differences. But today felt different. Leonardo's words had been an awakening, igniting a newfound confidence within him. As Peter returned to work, the atmosphere in the store had changed. People were showing more kindness. A woman, smiling warmly as she handed Peter her items, said, "You're doing a great job, Peter. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." An older man in the line also spoke up. "Keep it up, son. You've got more courage than most people out there." These small but genuine words became the building blocks that restored Peter's self-esteem, piece by piece, making him feel valued and important. The market now exuded a sense of solidarity. People were chatting amongst themselves, discussing the impact of small acts of kindness that could change someone's life. A young woman, still holding her phone, approached Jack, the store manager. "That was incredible. Did you see how he handled everything? You should post this on social media. People need to see how amazing Peter is." Jack smiled and nodded. "I agree. But right now, the most important thing is making sure Peter knows just how much he means." Indeed, the atmosphere in the market had transformed. What had once been just a commercial space now felt like a place where kindness and respect were valued. The people who had been merely waiting in line now conversed like old friends, supporting each other and sharing their thoughts about the moment they had just witnessed. When Peter's shift ended, he slowly made his way to the locker room. His steps were deliberate, but there was a sense of pride now within him. He sat on the wooden bench, staring at his uniform, reflecting on how much had changed in just a few hours. He had long believed he was invisible, that people only saw his flaws, but today, something had shifted. Leonardo's words had ignited something within him, a sense of pride that he never knew existed. He remembered his mother's words from earlier that morning. "You are so important to our family." And now, for the first time, Peter began to truly believe it. Meanwhile, Leonardo DiCaprio, walking calmly toward a parked car outside the market, wasn't seeking recognition. He didn't need applause. For him, this was just another day of doing what he believed was right. Before getting into his car, he glanced back at the market one last time and smiled. He knew that moment wasn't about him, it was about Peter. It was a moment where a simple act of empathy could change the course of a day, and perhaps, a life. The next morning, the event gained global recognition. The video of Leonardo standing up for Peter went viral, shared by millions across the globe. Hashtags like #respect for Peter and kindness matters began trending, raising awareness of the importance of treating others with dignity and respect. Those who had witnessed the moment in the market started sharing their experiences, inspiring others to reflect on how small, thoughtful actions could have a profound impact. Peter, who had once been afraid of being noticed, was now seen as a symbol of resilience and strength.